Well, hello ladies, sisters, friends. Today's video I am going to just share some very practical things that I have set into place and how I have changed how I run my home since having our fourth baby. If you are familiar with the way that I view the way I run my home, I run it like a business. I see myself as the CEO. I see my children as beautiful assets, and I see my dogs as liabilities. I see the things that I have to do around my home as a way of which things flow, and I like using the picture of a business because I think in my mind it makes way more sense and makes things run a lot smoother. So in this time and place as I'm making this video, this is what is currently working for us and the current things I've had to tweak and change, and you would be surprised because a lot of the things that I did with our newborn once we had 3 kids, so when we added our third, a lot of those things that made life very convenient and easy, I tried to put in place with the fourth, and it just hasn't worked. And so I have been adjusting because our children are older now and the age gap is different. So we have 2 sets of 2 under 2. So our first set, they're 16 months apart, and this set, I think they're 19 months apart or 20 months apart. But the age gap between my youngest and oldest is just shy of 5 years. So my oldest turned 5 a month or like 3 weeks before my fourth was born. And so very close in age. And I'm just sharing this to encourage you to view things in different ways and yeah, just kind of not put so much pressure on yourself. So if you watched my video that I did last week, I talk about how I felt the Lord really calling me and waking me up to the fact that taking care of my home was something that was starting to become an idol for me. So I will link that video down below. That was like my first or my second week postpartum. It was after my 5 days in bed. So it was like that first week coming back to adjusting to life. And since then, once I had that realization, there were a lot of things that I had to change and implement. And I encourage every single mother, every single woman to just sit down consistently, especially in a season of transition. If you're starting a new job or a new school, or your husband is starting something new, anytime you're in a season of transition, I think it's so wise to consistently evaluate things. So I would even text my husband while I was doing something, and if I started to notice that there was more stress or that there were things that just weren't running as smoothly, I would just make a mental note in my head, but I was also texting my husband. So for example, one of the days I went out with all 4 of them and we didn't get out the door until around 10:30. And I didn't think that would be an issue because previously it wasn't an issue. But it did slowly become an issue because it was getting too close to nap time and there were other things that were happening, and I just made a little note. I sent it to my husband. I was like, hey babe, just a little note. I'm just talking out loud here with you. I have to leave the house by like 9 a.m. If I leave any later than that, it runs too close to nap time. We feel too rushed. There's not enough time to be able to breastfeed or account for blowouts or any tantrums or any correcting that needs to be done. And when things are rushed, it's more intense, more stressful. And so I have just been in this consistent state of reevaluating and seeing, okay, I want my children to remember that when we had another baby in our family, it wasn't chaos. It wasn't just hanging on by a thread. Mommy was always stressed out. I want my children to see adding another beautiful child to the family as a time of joy and celebration and yes, adjustment, but I also want them to not get upset at this baby because so much of their life has changed, or because mommy is constantly angry, or mommy, like these attributes and things that we can easily do under stress and pressure and lack of sleep and etc. And so I've been more conscious of that. And so the first thing I noticed was that my hormones were taking a little bit longer to adjust than I had previously remembered. There were moments where I was just crying tears of joy and then tears of sadness within like 5 minutes of each other. And while yes, that's like normal for you to experience postpartum, it started to become really exhausting. And so I was talking to my midwife about it, and I'll link it down below, but it's from, I think it's from Earthly, but I got a postpartum like tincture. It's like different herbs and things. And so it's supposed to help with your hormones rebalancing. I don't know if it's because of more pregnancies. I don't know if it was because I was pregnant 2 times within 1 year with Gyra and then this one. I'm not sure, but I feel like my body was struggling a little bit harder. And so just practically speaking, that is something that I did. If you are currently postpartum yourself as well, I suggest doing that. Another suggestion I have is to seek out therapy or counseling. I've talked about BetterHelp many times on my channel here before. I'll have my 10% off link and code down below, but it's a great option if you are in the thick of the trenches and you don't have someone to talk to, if you don't know what you're even dealing with, or if you just can't even put things into words, or it's just more than you thought you could handle. I think it's so wise to seek outside counsel and wise counsel, to have someone speak life into you, but also just give practical tips. And maybe this is your first child and maybe things from your own childhood are coming up, or I'm not sure, but I think it is wise to be aware of the signs and catch them very quickly and early on. Do not wait. I think postpartum is something that you cannot wait for because it's so easy to let things spiral. So BetterHelp is so great because you're able to do it online. You can do video chat, you can do text message. There's so many different ways of communication. You don't have to go into a physical space and an office and sit there and spend time driving, spend time waiting in the waiting room. It is on your clock, which is just so great, especially if you're frustrated postpartum. So I'll have a link and code to BetterHelp down below if you want to save 10% off and try it out. It is amazing, it's fabulous. So maybe it is just your hormones need rebalancing. Maybe it is that you just need someone to talk to. But once you figure those things out, then I think it's wise to reassess and see things that are working and not working. So I'm going to just very practically share things that have worked for us. But again, I'm just sharing them, and that is what is currently working by the time I'm filming and recording this video. Maybe a week from now, it's going to change. That's why I am so big on reassessing things frequently and daily. And if you have older kids, to even sit with your kids and ask them, like, what worked really well for us this week? What was something that was stressful for you? Or what was something that you found made it difficult for you to be able to do X, Y, and Z? Because our family, we run our family like a soccer team. We run our family like a team. And so we as a team, and my husband being the coach of our team, we're constantly reevaluating what our players are doing, how we can best help them. Does this player need better cleats? Does this player need a new uniform? And though obviously I'm not speaking of my child like literally needing new cleats. I'm speaking of that in a sense of this just child need this love language spoken to and addressed more. Does this child need this amount of time of alone time? Does this child thrive better just being outside for longer, or whatever have you? I think it's wise to consistently reevaluate. So let's talk about just traveling with the kids. So as you guys know, I love to get out of the house with the kids at least once a day. And I've gotten back to doing it first thing in the morning. Again, I found that that just works really well for us. And now that I am more physically healed and that the baby is sleeping through the night and I'm not as exhausted, it is easier for me to wake up in the morning and get things rolling more effectively. Now, this is one of the things that worked really well with our third that's not working with our fourth, and that is the car seat stroller situation. So we had the Duna. It's the second child we're using the Duna with. And the first couple of times I went out when I was like 1 week postpartum, my husband was able to come with me. So praise God for that, because we were both able to have our eyes on the kids and it wasn't just me as we are adjusting to these things. So I quickly realized that actually having the car seat with a baby in it became way more difficult to move around and handle with the other 3 versus just having me wear the baby. Hands-free, I think, is really key when you have 2 under 2, because the age that our toddler is in right now is we are currently working through not running away and obeying and these very basic things that are actually very important because they are for safety reasons. And so if I have a toddler that is running straight from the road, I was left in a situation, do I leave this baby in the doona here and bolt after the toddler, or do I try to run with this car seat stroller that's not the best on grass and possibly could tip over in efforts to get to the toddler? So praise God, the first time that we went out, my husband was with me, and so I was able to bolt for the toddler. Baby was not left unattended, and my husband was with the baby. But after that incident, I said, yep, I can't, nope, we're not doing that anymore. So we have not used the doona nearly as much as I have than I did with my third. With my third, everywhere we went, we used the stroller portion of the doona. It was fabulous, it was easy, it was quick, like it worked really well because my other 2 just stayed right alongside me and walked with us. But that is currently not the case, and so if I am out with all 3 of them, I am baby wearing the entire time. I like having my hands free, I like being able to pick up my toddler if I need to, I like being able to bolt and run and chase after another one if I need to. I just much prefer not having to worry about a baby being in a specific spot if I need to run after someone else. So baby wearing is my best friend. Another thing that I've noticed is I am way quicker to move on. Move on has been like my logo right now, because if I see that homeschooling is not working at the particular time I'm trying to do it at, I simply move on to the next activity we need to do. Or if I'm trying to put the toddler down and toddler doesn't want a nap, we're moving on. I'm not gonna sit here and fight and try to get you to nap for the next 30 minutes. Same with baby. If I am wearing baby and baby is passed out and I'm trying to transfer baby to the bassinet and baby wakes up, moving on. I'm not gonna lay you down. I'm putting you right back in the carrier and we're moving on with our day. I have found that flexibility and the idea of moving on to the next thing has been my best friend, because I am not adamant and stuck on something that's clearly not going to happen. Whereas opposed to before, I would say, well, no, this needs to happen right now in order for things to continue to flow well. So I'm going to just sit here for the next 10 to 15 minutes and try to get this child to fall back asleep, or try to push through this homeschool curriculum that is just, this child is obviously not in the right state to do this. We're moving on. And it's been joyous for me because I found that I am way more patient this way. I am slow to anger in this way. I found that the fruits of the Spirit are more evident in my life when I have this mentality of we're moving on. We're not going to just sit here in anger. The Bible says be angry, but do not sin. And I found that it's been harder to do that second part when things are more heightened. So you can be angry. So yeah, I can be upset at the fact that this nap situation isn't working right now, but I'm not going to sin and get angry and yell at my child or be frustrated or do something sinful. And so move on is how I've been able to be angry but not sin. And so that's been real nice. Another thing is that I have to write everything down. Templates by Me is something that I launched, I think 3 years ago at this point, and I still use it every single day. If you guys aren't familiar with Templates by Me, they're just really simple templates that I created that you can write down your meals for the week, what you need to do for that day, a week at a glance. Like, it is a mother's dream come true as far as templates and being able to write your things down. I always laminate mine. And so it's really easy to be able to just wipe it and rewrite it or scrap something off. But writing everything down has been so helpful, especially using the week at a glance one, because I will just generally jot down what needs to be done that week. And so if one day is running rather smoothly, and let's say the kids, so like when I was actually filming this video, my kids ended up playing for almost 2 hours independently, which was the grace of God, because I was able to get some things that I needed to get done. but that doesn't always happen. And so I was able to look at my week at a glance and see, okay, later this week I have this that I need to do for work, so let me do it now. I have this coming later, so let me just do it now. So I love the idea of being able to plug and play things where they fit and can go. And so I was able to get ahead on a couple of things, which was great because later the week they weren't independently playing and this came up and baby was super gassy, and so there were just other things that came up. So writing down exactly what you need to do for that entire week, this is like the CEO portion and like the business portion, I would say, of our household that works really well, is just knowing what needs to be done ahead of the time that it needs to be done and moving things accordingly. And that's the grace too, you know, like there is grace within this as well. So it's not going to be every day that the kids independently play really well. And even in this case, like I had every intention to actually sit down and homeschool the kids while the babies were napping, because 2 were sleeping, 1 ended up waking up, but it was fine. But that's normally when we do homeschool. And so that's when I like to take full advantage of that. But they were playing super well. And again, the blessing of homeschool is that there is no set time that it needs to end and start by. And so I was more than okay with setting a timer for them, letting them know they had an hour to play, and that once that hour is up, we were going to resume homeschool. But once the timer did go off, they kindly asked to continue playing, and so I let them do that, and I was able to get other things done. And then another hour had passed and we were able to resume homeschool and finish it just in time before my toddler woke up. And so there is flexibility and room in doing things. The other thing I've really noticed I've had to do is if I need to use my phone for something, I'm using for that said thing and then I'm immediately getting off of it. So my baby loves this really sweet lullaby, and so I will go on my phone, play the lullaby, and put my phone back down. I think it's so easy as moms to get seduced by our phones. Like I feel like that's a really good word, because you go on it for one reason and then you end up on Pinterest 5 minutes later and it's like, how did I get here? Or you're watching those videos of those 2 guys building these massive slides in the middle of the jungle with like a fork. Do you know what videos I'm talking about? So you end up watching one of those and you're like, how did I get here? And it's like the middle of the day at 3 p.m. So get on your phone for what you need to and have the discipline to put it immediately back down. This is definitely a lot easier said than done. Now, as I finish up here, I'm going to just give a couple more things that I have found that have really helped us right now. So I remember going to Jordan and just consistently asking him and just talking to him about my frustrations. Now, I wasn't frustrated at him, obviously, we're on the same team, but I was saying like, hey babe, the way that we're running our soccer team right now, these things aren't working. And I presented them to him, and we just immediately came up with changes and things that we could do that could be done the next day, because I was crying in his arms at night. And so I was like, babe, I need to wake up tomorrow knowing that X, Y, and Z is going to be changed. Sure, there are certain things that we can change in the future, and that was like what he was suggesting. But I was like, I would love if we could focus on things that could be changed and done right now, so when I wake up, things feel different. And so one of the things that we did was change the schedules for the animals. You guys know we have quite a lot of animals and they do require a lot of work. And so we had to really come up with a new system and schedule to be able to take care of our animals and be able to take care of our kids and other things that we have to take care of in a way that worked, because I found that they were clashing into each other and it was just not working. So we came up with a new system for taking care and scheduling the animals and taking care of them in a beautiful way. I also had to become way more disciplined in my bedtime. I am a morning person, and I can also totally be a night owl. My husband is a night owl, and so I normally am more than okay to sacrifice my sleep in order to spend that time with him at night, but still wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. And so that did work before, where I could, kind of hang on and do that for a while, but it has just not really been working. I found that around 5, I just really struggle to finish out the rest of the day. And so I have been trying really hard to be disciplined enough to be in bed by 9. And so in order for that to happen, food needs to be at the table around 5:30. Baths need to get started by a specific time. I need to be bathed by a specific time. And so in order for that to happen, it was like a domino effect of other things. And I feel so much better going to bed around that time versus like midnight. Because no one, you know, nothing good happens past midnight. We all know that saying. And that doesn't just apply when you're a teenager. It sure applies when you're a mother. So that's another thing. I already talked about it, but being out the door by 9 a.m. If I am having an early morning where I am working before the kids wake up, this doesn't happen. And so I used to be able to just quote unquote do it all, where I was able to work in the morning and go out with the kids and do this and do that and not working. I can't have multiple meetings within the same day. I need to spread out my meetings. I used to be able to knock out multiple meetings within the nap time hour. I can no longer do that. Between having to breastfeed the baby and homeschooling the kids and making sure everyone's fed and laundry's done and all the other things, it was just becoming overwhelming too quickly. And I found myself in this more fight or flight mode, just trying to get things done instead of being able to enjoy and be present and fully invested in whatever it was that I was doing. So that's another thing for me. An app for my baby's schedule and nursing him. So I'm in a pretty strict, like 2.5 to 3 hour feeding schedule throughout the day. I make sure he gets really good feedings, really full, big chunky boy. He's already doubled his weight. And so I make sure that he is getting these feedings very consistently, because that's how he sleeps really well at night without having to wake up. And so I can't really keep track of timers that my kids are using, timers that I'm using for baking, and then his feeding schedule. So I have a specific app that I use. I'll link it down below. I've used it with my previous baby, but I'm making sure to not let that slip by, because sometimes I do forget. Sometimes when I do forget, it's not good. So using that app to keep me specifically scheduled for my baby has made just my mental headspace a little bit more clear. And then the other thing is I have one specific day that is designated to do the catch-all, pick up, clean up, reset day. And that is Sundays for me. I noticed that I'm able to prep meals for the week. I'm able to clean out the fridge, get groceries ordered, basically what I was doing before. But this day feels a little bit more important now, because I will notice that I'll let the playroom get a little bit messy, the rest of the house gets a little bit messy. And so this day is more so for kind of just putting things back into place. And it's been a pretty crucial day, but I found that is how I've been able to quote unquote not allow the house to become an idol during the week or at any point, because I know in my head, like, it's all right, I will have the chance to do that on Sunday. It's okay if this happens right now. It's okay if that happens. So these are some little things that I have found that has made the transition to adding a fourth baby in a short amount of time with my other children just is more manageable. I know they might seem really small, and again, they might change next week, who knows? But above all else, let the Word of God be something that you meditate your heart on day and night, because I cannot be the mother I need to be for my children if I'm not getting poured in by the Lord. I cannot be who the Lord has called me to do and be without relying on Him and His Word and His guidance. Motherhood is not meant to be done alone. It is meant to be holding the Father's hand the entire time. So above all else, don't forget that. I'll have my other videos linked down below sharing just what this season of life has been. And I will also leave my BetterHelp link down below if you want to get 10% off. I love you guys. Be blessed, and I will see you in my next video.